A. And I think altogether there's about 50 companies from the US between our pavilion, the state of North Carolina, the state of Virginia, the Softwood Export Council. There are a lot of people here interested in this market. So what AHEC does is provide educational materials and information about the wide variety of American hardwoods that grow in the United States. We're headquartered just outside of Washington, D.C. We have 5 international offices: Mexico, Europe, Dubai, Hong Kong, which covers China and Southeast Asia, and Osaka. We have a global reach to promote American hardwoods just about anywhere that they can be specified. Some of the things that we try to promote, we always look at underused species. There are a lot of species that grow in the United States, and everybody knows white oak and walnut, but there are a lot of species that could be very valuable to you in a way that you can use them maybe in support for furniture, something like yellow poplar. We're trying to promote these underused species and find new markets for them, and new grades as well. We always look to capitalize on the low carbon credentials of American hardwoods. There's no other material in the world that starts off carbon negative in its carbon footprint, but wood is able to do that because of the way that a tree grows, and we really have a major advantage when it comes to things like plastics and steel and concrete that we need to continue to educate people about. We also are always looking for new applications. How can we transform wood into something new? Looking at things like thermally modified wood to be used in cladding, decking, cross-laminated timbers so that you can use wood to actually build skyscrapers and stuff. We are always looking to develop these new opportunities for American hardwoods. Many of you probably know the United States has a lot of forests, but not all of those forests are hardwood. This map shows the main hardwood growing regions in the United States. You have northern, central, southern, Appalachian in orange, and a little bit on the west coast. Now, the timber that grows in each of these regions can be quite different. Even though it's all red oak from the south will look a little bit different than red oak from the north. There are different species in different climates throughout the United States. So also educating people about what you're buying and where it's coming from helps find a good match between buyer and supplier. These are just a few of the major commercial species. Our translator in our booth helped me with the Vietnamese name for all these. We have hickory, cherry, hard maple, red oak, tulip wood, also called yellow poplar, American white oak, and walnut. So something that's unique about the forest in the United States is not just one species. You buy from some countries and the major commercial species is 1 or 2 species. We have a wide variety of color and grain patterns that from just one supplier, you can buy several different species and achieve different looks for each product line that you may have. This graph shows the percentage of each species that's growing in the forest. And one of the things that I talked about was promoting underused species. Everybody knows walnut. Walnut is about 1% of the American hardwood forest. We have a lot of red oak and white oak and maple. These are species that we have in abundance, which also means they're a lot easier to get in higher grades. So if you're looking for clear wood, if you're looking for a consistent supply, understanding some of the other species can be very, very important. So we always look at the sustainability of the forest. How are we measuring? We're looking at a few things. We want there to be natural regeneration in the forest. We want the forest to be healthy enough to regrow itself and not have to go in and plant trees. A successful forest is going to be able to regrow the species that were cut. We want there to be more growth than harvest, and we're able to measure that using satellites from the U.S. Forest Service. And we always want to work with foresters on the ground, people who are landowners, people who care about the forest health, to make sure that we are considering all of the factors and making sure that we continue to have healthy forests clean water, clean air, all these things that are important to all of us. Now, unfortunately, in the United States, we didn't always have sustainable forest management. This photo is from about 150 years ago. Much of the eastern United States was clear cut in the late 1800s. And I have another photo. This is actually very close to where I grew up in the southern Appalachian Mountains. Whole mountain ranges were cut. It was to clear land for farming. It was to build homes. It was just the urban expansion that was happening at that time resulted in a lot of clear cut. But fortunately, attitudes changed. And this photo is that exact same forest today. If you drive through the Blue Ridge Parkway and all these beautiful areas in the eastern United States, you may not realize that much of that land had been clear cut and has been reforested. And the way that we're able to do that is through a process called selective harvesting. And I love this huge screen. It does kind of make me feel like I'm in the forest. Where I'm standing about right here is where a tree would have been cut. And the way that we do selective harvesting is a forester or a landowner will go in and mark the tree that needs to be removed. And when that tree is cut, it opens up the sunlight through the forest canopy so that new trees are able to grow. You can see some white oak seedlings starting to pop up right here at the bottom. So a lot of people will look at this and not even realize that a harvest has happened. But that's how we're able to regrow the forest, is by only selecting the mature trees. So what that leads to, when you only are cutting the biggest trees selectively over time, the forest will grow. This map shows, this graph shows the standing volume of the hardwood forest in the United States. It has continued to increase. We have more than double the trees that we had in the 1950s. And this bar graph are the age of the trees. You can see most of the trees, the most common age class is 61 to 80 years. Over half of the forest volume in the United States is older than 60 years old. So these are mature trees that we have across the forest. And we're actually to a point where we are underutilizing the trees and mortality is starting to increase. More trees are starting to die in the forest that aren't being used. So we can increase production and still have a healthy forest. This graph are the growth and removals in hardwood. So not the total volume, but the amount that's expanding compared to the amount that is removed. And removals are trees that are cut, but also trees that die naturally in the forest. And just about every year, we've been able to maintain a over 2-to-1 ratio of growth to removals. So our forests continue to expand. And this volume across the entire United States is pretty staggering. It's very amazing. We have 14 billion cubic meters of standing hardwood growing in U.S. forests. 14 billion cubic meters. That volume is expanding after harvesting. The expanding forest volume is 150 million cubic meters. So that's 5 cubic meters of solid hardwood every second. So to visualize that another way, that's 7 Olympic-sized swimming pools full of solid hardwood growing every hour. That's how much our forests are expanding. What's also amazing is all this expansion is happening at a time when the United States is the world's largest exporter of hardwood products. This graph shows the largest hardwood lumber exporters. The United States is this blue bar here at the bottom. The total market trade has decreased a little bit, but the United States is still the largest supplier of hardwood lumber anywhere in the world. Forest ownership is very different in the United States than a lot of other countries. In a lot of places, forests are owned by governments, and they're kind of parceled out in concessions where the management of the forest is controlled by the government. A major difference in the United States is the forests are owned in private lands, family ownership. This graph of the US shows public lands, protected lands in dark green, and the light green are family ownership. And it's about 40% of total forest land is family owned. And much of where hardwood production is coming from is coming from these small landholders. It's about 90%. This is the total growing stock and where removals are happening. This dark green bar is private landowners. So when hardwood products are being created, they're starting on private lands 90% of the time. It's not coming from government lands. And these private landowners oftentimes are not managing with timber products in mind. This is a survey from the United States Department of Agriculture that asked landowners, people who have forests on their property, what are you managing for? Why do you have a forest? The top responses are always about beauty and about nature. It's top response, beauty or scenery, wildlife habitat, nature protection, and then you have family legacy, privacy. A lot of times people want to be in the woods for privacy, to have their own kind of nature retreat, water protection, land investment, and then down here at the bottom, timber products. It's one of the least common answers. People that own forests aren't owning them to cut them over and over and over. A lot of times harvest will happen just once in a generation, especially if they're a selective harvest. So the forest mix is 90% private landowners. That's where hardwoods are coming from. There's 11 million forest owners in the United States, and less than 4% of them are certified, because a lot of times if you're harvesting only once in a generation, you're not paying annual certification dues, they're not going through that process to get certified. It doesn't mean that the wood is not coming from a sustainable place, it just means that it's not certified. And most owners are harvesting once in a generation, only taking a couple of trees at a time. What that means is an average sawmill is going to be purchasing from hundreds, if not thousands, of different land properties in a single year. So that's where things like the EUDR get very complicated, because they want to tie everything back to a real estate property. Where that's owned by the government, that's a very large concession area. Where it's owned by a single person, a lot of times the average size is about 27 acres. So Rupert will be able to talk about all of that in the context of the EUDR and the American Hardwood Assured, or AHA system that we've developed to kind of make the EUDR possible when you're using American hardwoods. Altogether, just the volume of American hardwood that we've been talking about, that's expanding by 7 Olympic-sized swimming pools every hour. The volume of just the wood coverage in the United States is about 3.5 times the area of all of Vietnam. So it really is a massive resource that continues to grow. So we've taken a lot of this information, a lot of this satellite mapping and tracking of the species and the growth and removal. We've put it into an interactive map, and the QR code will take you to this page. It's on AmericanHardwood.org. You can specify for a different species, you can click on the states, and you can actually see where things are growing, where they're being removed, and the total change in volume. I believe I picked North Carolina, and you have growth and removals and your net growth for American red oak. So this is a really helpful tool if you want to look into some of the forest health statistics that we have. And I'll finish off with a couple of trade slides. There's been a lot of developments in international trade. It's always interesting to see kind of what the markets are doing and what's popular in each market. This is a graph of our mid-year exports. So to be current, everything that I'm going to show is just for the first half of each year. So these are lumber exports. The largest market for the United States is still China. It's down a fair bit from pre-COVID, but it is still our largest market, followed by Canada and then Vietnam in the light green. Looking at the logs and lumber mix, when China banned the import of US hardwood logs, a lot of those logs came here in Vietnam. So a good amount of the growth that we've seen has been the log market here. There are a lot of sawmills that have set up, producing a lot of material. Looking at the species of logs, this is by value. Walnut is the most imported species here in Vietnam for logs. just over $100 million in the first half of this year of walnut logs coming from the US and Vietnam. And looking at the lumber species to Vietnam, not as much walnut. It's the third most popular species. This is by board feet, so this is by volume. So white oak number one, and then yellow poplar, red oak, western red alder, and walnut. Walnut is fifth most popular species here for lumber. All right, so with that, we'll thank you very much. I appreciate it, and we'll set up here for Rupert to be able to tell you a little bit about the EUDR and the AHN. Thank you. Come on.